Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a B1 or B2 English learner, you know exactly how incredibly stressful the TOEFL ITP listening comprehension section can be. I mean, your palms get sweaty, the audio just seems to play way too fast, and suddenly you feel like you've completely forgotten every single word of English you've ever learned, right? Well, take a deep breath. Seriously, because today we're going to lower that test anxiety big time by decoding two absolutely essential TOEFL listening skills. So let's start with a big question. Do you need a perfect memory to pass the TOEFL? Let's be totally honest with ourselves here. When you sit down to practice, do you find yourself trying to memorize every single word you hear? Do you start to panic if you miss just one tiny little preposition? If you do, trust me, you are definitely not alone. It's a massive source of stress for so many test takers out there. But the answer to this question, it actually changes everything about how you should be preparing. The answer is a hard no. You absolutely do not need a photographic memory to ace this test. No way. So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. Number 1, the memory trap. Number 2, the last line clue. Number 3, the distractor trap. Number 4, the synonym solution. And finally, number 5, the 4-step master plan. All right, let's dive right in with section 1, the memory trap. Comprehension, not memorization. This is honestly a huge hurdle for so many people. A lot of students sit down in that exam room and try to act like human tape recorders instead of active listeners. And trying to memorize every single word, it's not just super stressful, it's highly ineffective. Instead, you've got to train yourself to identify the most important piece of information. Remember, the test is measuring your comprehension, your ability to actually understand what is happening in the conversation, not your ability to temporarily memorize a script. Moving on to section 2, the last line clue. This is where the most important information hides. Think for a second about how the Part A short conversations are actually structured. It's kind of like a formula. The first speaker, they act as your map. They provide the context, maybe they ask a question, or they just set up the overall situation. But that second speaker is the one who responds with an opinion, a decision, or a vital piece of new information. They almost always deliver the main idea in their final sentence. And because of this setup, TOEFL questions are frequently based entirely on that very last line. It is literally your golden ticket. So whenever you're taking Part A of the listening test, I want this question flashing in your mind in bright neon letters. What is the speaker's main message in the last line? It's that simple. Getting into the habit of answering that one specific question in your head will very often lead you directly to the correct response on the page. But okay, hold on. Here is a really important warning. Do not ignore the beginning. You can't just plug your ears for the first half of the audio and wait for the end. That won't work. Those opening lines provide the essential context you need to actually interpret that last line correctly. So listen to the whole thing, but just give special, highly focused attention to that final response. Which brings us to section 3, the distractor trap. Beware of familiar words. Now this is where the test makers get a little bit sneaky. Many students make a completely logical but totally fatal mistake. They search the answers for the exact words they just heard in their headphones. But listen, the test makers intentionally put exact words from the audio into the wrong answer choices. They are literally designed to sound familiar, just to trap you. But you have to remember, they do not express the intended meaning of the conversation. The test is measuring your ability to understand meaning, not to just match identical words. Simply put, familiarity absolutely does not guarantee correctness. So how do we beat that trap? Section 4, the synonym solution. Match meanings, not words. Just to make sure we're on the exact same page, let's define what we mean here. A synonym is simply a word or an expression that has the same or nearly the same meaning as another word. During the real test, you might hear one specific word in the audio, but the correct answer, it's probably going to replace it with a completely different word that communicates the exact same idea. Let's look at a few concrete examples to make this real. Say you hear the word buy in the audio. Well, the correct answer choice might use the word purchase instead. If someone wants to start a project, the answer might say they want to begin. Finish becomes complete, help turns into assist, and leave swaps out for depart. You see what's happening? The core meaning stays exactly the same, but the vocabulary changes. Let's run through just a few more essential pairs you'll probably run into. Job matches up with occupation. Fast links to rapid. Fix swaps with repair. Now, if someone complains that a test was difficult, the correct answer will likely say it was challenging, or expensive becomes costly. The larger your vocabulary and the more synonym pairs you know, the easier it becomes to quickly recognize when a test answer is just restating the original message. If you take away just one thing from this explainer today, I want to forcefully reiterate this golden rule. Your goal is not to match words, it is to match meanings. After you hear the conversation, ask yourself, all right, which answer expresses that same idea in different words? The most successful test takers are the ones who focus on the ideas, interpret what the speaker actually intends, and instantly recognize when an answer is just paraphrasing the final idea. Let's tie all of this together. Section 5. The 4-step master plan, your exam room strategy. When you finally sit down for part A of the test, I want you to treat every single question like it's a code-breaking exercise. It's a game. Step 1. Listen carefully to that first speaker to understand the overall situation. Get your map. Step 2. Pay incredibly close attention to the second speaker, specifically identifying the key idea in their final sentence. Step 3. Quickly think of possible synonyms for those key ideas in your head. And finally, Step 4. Choose the answer that communicates that exact same meaning. If you practice this 4-step process, you'll naturally train your brain to focus on the speaker's true meaning, rather than getting distracted by the words themselves. Which leaves us with this final, somewhat provocative thought. How can you practice finding synonyms in the English content you listen to every single day? Seriously, whether you're watching a movie, streaming a show, or listening to music, try silently paraphrasing the sentences you hear in your head using totally different vocabulary. Mastering this kind of active listening strategy won't just make you a much more confident test taker and bump up your TOEFL score, it's actually going to fundamentally improve how you understand the English language as a whole. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and happy studying.